Tuesday. It is noon. So we got our little lunch show. Kayla McDonald, Remax Alliance Group, and Miss Lindsay Weber.
Hello, Keystone Mortgage Solutions. How are you? You said Tuesday, and I had to verify that it was Tuesday.
Well, now since you said that, you just made me second guess it. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not Tuesday.
Nope, it is 100% Tuesday.
It's been a long week already, right?
Right. It's been a
A
weird
doozy.
couple weeks, honestly.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
so actually, I think that's what stemmed some of our conversation that we're going to talk about today of things that have transpired and situations that have happened and um, the do's and don'ts, so to speak, of the real estate world on both
Yeah.
sides.
Buying and selling. Yep.
How that looks to us, how that looks to your everyday consumer, I guess is the best way to look at it. And anyway, point is that we've had some doozies here recently. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure if it's actually like the market and things are changing because that happens, or if it's just so happens to be that time where one thing after another happen, just takes place because that
Yeah.
happens too, and things that we can do to avoid them or to make the process smoother, better have transition, and just to know the process and to be able to say um, that we both have the full story so we can work together to be an advocate for the client opposed to trying to go on a treasure hunt and figure out things of what transpired and things that come up and things that underwriting sees, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just interesting, all the different things that can happen in a transaction. And if you would have known the information to begin with, it would have
Could
looked
have been avoided.
yeah, it would have looked completely different than the circumstance that we're in.
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead.
And I think a common misconception too is like, I think some people are like, we can't tell the lender this, or we can't let them know about this situation because it's going to be something that's detrimental to you when you're trying to purchase a home.
Or so they
However,
think.
so they think, and it's almost like you're trying to hide from the IRS, which you're not the IRS. I'm not the IRS. We want to help you and guide you in the best way, as a buyer to, to be able to hopefully smoothly go through a home buying process. But when you aren't upfront and honest about your situation, um, then sometimes it causes issues and delays, and it could cost time and money. And in this industry, they kind of just go hand in hand because things expire. These contracts that these people enter into, and everyone enters into as a buyer or a seller, these are legally binding contracts. So we have deadlines and things that we have to follow. And it's important because you can get into legal trouble if these deadlines are not met. You can lose money. There's just a whole bunch of different scenarios that could happen that they don't happen every day. So, I'm not trying to sit here and neither are you. We're not trying to scare anybody, but I think the moral of the story and the point of it is make sure you talk with us. What if it's not me, when your financial stuff, like I can't give many answers because I don't know the whole story. And, I'm also not a licensed mortgage broker or a loan officer. So, that's important to discuss that with your loan officer, broker, with Lindsay, and make sure they know the whole story. So that way, she can advise you
Yeah.
better.
So what I like to tell my clients is you tell me everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. I've
Mhm.
heard it all. I've seen it all. But if you are either one, uncomfortable, which that happens, and everybody's had a circumstance in life that isn't easy to talk about, one way or another. But like as far as your finances go, it and even your personal life. I was going to say just your finances, but the truth be told, that it's your life story, and
Mhm.
say that you got a divorce. I need to know that, because circumstances that have taken place from the time that you got divorced, or the state that we're buying in, or are you legally divorced, or are we just separated? That all comes into play within our transaction. And if I know the information up front, I know how to, number one, I know how to take the application. For example, if two people are in the transaction and they're not married to each other, but one of them's married still to another party, that person that's married, their other person that they're married to, because Florida is a community property, if it's their primary resident, it's like the whole list, but they have to go to a closing and sign, because it's community property state. Or we have to let title know and let them know that the vesting needs to be changed, or there's so many ins and outs of just something simple like that. Like, hey, I'm still married. Maybe you haven't talked to them in 5 years. It's still a legal document on a piece of paper that, if I know the information, that we can prepare for. So I was like I said, I was going to say, I need to know all of your finances. I need to know your story. I literally have a like a, I don't know, like intake sheet type of thing, where I'm having this conversation, and that's where I get majority of the information, is just by the simple conversation. Then they go and say that, we're pre-approved, and they're having a conversation with Kayla, showing them a house, and they tell her something. So Kayla and I communicate very well as far as, circumstances that come up, whether they're in the house talking about it, or just things that have taken place that I've gotten information from her, not even necessarily the client, about something that I needed to know, to avoid potential problems. So the whole story, and having the clients have that faith and that trust in you to be able to comfortably talk about the things that have happened in their lives.
Even if you don't think it matters, because I think a lot of times too, people just leave stuff out, not that they're trying to hide, but they're just like, oh, it doesn't matter. This happened in the past. Like, it's not going to affect me, or this isn't a big
think about it.
Yeah. It's, and I think a lot of times that's the case, that people aren't trying to be malicious, or like, I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to like, I'm going to get
relevant to them. But in my world, I'm like, oh, I wish you would have told me.
I know. Yeah. I mean, anything could happen, because like, going back to the whole marriage thing, I had a client in the past, and they were purchasing a home, and it was with a mortgage. They're applying for a mortgage. Well, I didn't know this, and I don't think her loan officer knew either. So she was in a relationship with another man, and they weren't married, but which is fine, no big deal. But then come to find out, she's still married to her ex-husband, but they're still legally married, but he lived in another state, and it was just like, he had to acknowledge the mortgage, because legally they are still together. And, and on the mortgage side, he needs to acknowledge that you're taking out a loan, because you guys are still legally married. Mm-hmm. So that was fun. So yes, definitely lots of things that can be avoided, or at least prepared to navigate in a much better way. And I think as a buyer, it's just so important to be prepared and educated, and set the expectation. And I know that we talk about that a lot on our show, is being just education, because when we were with Mike Wells, he said it best: you don't know what you don't know. So it's nobody's fault, and people don't navigate through, purchasing a house and going through the whole loan application and mortgage every day. Okay. And if you do, things change so much, you still aren't going to be an expert. So like, it's just a lot. And I think to have that expectation set up front, as far as timelines, things that could potentially happen, it just makes it easier on everybody, including, yourself, the buyer, someone who's going through the process. So that way, if something comes up or information is needed, or there is a delay, we're like, okay, we knew that this is probably going to happen. it just takes your level of stress from up here down to here, because this is a stressful process, no matter how smooth it goes or not.
Yeah. We're on timelines and waiting for other people to do things. And they were up to me. We want it done as quick as we possibly can. But, the lenders themselves, they have their process and their reviews and quality control and things that they do internally that we really don't even have anything to do with on our side. Some of it takes time. So we kind of just are at their mercy at times. So we try to make it as smooth as possible, through the whole entire transaction, and to be as prepared as we can, to be able to give a good I call it painting a picture. Like, the better the picture that I've painted before I deliver it to somebody, that underwriter knows what it is.
Yeah.
But if I have holes and bits and pieces that are not filled in, or we're waiting for things, or then all of those pieces make that big picture, is the best way that I describe, when I'm working with the client. Help me paint the picture. Help me put all the pieces together. And where you want insurance quotes to get an idea. Say that we're working on a loan, and we have estimated insurance at $1,200 a year, and we get the insurance, and for one reason or another, it's double that. Well, if we don't know that up front, it could change our whole entire transaction.
Yeah.
You're talking.
It could disqualify a buyer.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking $100 in additional debt a month that we're not accounting for to start with. That's a big deal. And it's my job to figure it out. Okay, fine. This happened. Can we get cheaper insurance? Why is it expensive? Are there things that we can do to be able to get the insurance for less by, I don't know, maybe changing the coverage? Or we've had a circumstance recently that if we go and we put that third nail in, or hurricane straps, that we have the opportunity to get that insurance premium lower. Do we need to adjust the interest rate? Do we need to adjust the loan amount? Do we need to pay off a small little credit card, just, for qualification purposes? So that's my job, is to figure it out when it presents itself. But if I have all the information to begin with, pretty much, then the transaction goes a lot smoother.
Right.
We had the right taxes on the property. And that was big when we had Mike Wells on, is that if we're working like new construction or anticipated taxes of some sort of way, his website is fantastic.
Yeah.
To be able to calculate what those taxes are. Like, that is such a big help. So
it is very huge. And, I think that's one of the things that people overlook and underestimate the most, because everyone's looking at what the taxes are for that home, but it's not that that the taxes are based on the home itself. It's based on the sale. And then it goes from there. So I think that is something that, I definitely always tell my clients, like, okay, this is what your taxes are now, right now. And they're based on this home and their value, like what they purchased it on or as. And, remember, like, this is probably going to double, or, depending on when this home was, built or purchased or whatnot. So I've seen that.
We go off of the taxes that, like, the last owner paid, because that's the tax bill that we use. We're pulling from the site. But if we know that there's such a big gap between from when this particular person bought it and somebody else bought it, we're able to help that out a little bit. But in the grand scheme of things, if we're going off the old tax bill, and great, they qualify, but next year when they get their tax bill, that changes their whole entire mortgage payment. And then we get phone calls saying, hey, my mortgage payment went up. No, your tax bill changed, and now they've adjusted. And yes, you have to now pay additional money. So it's a big deal.
It's a lot.
Information is right.
And if you're not ready, and it doesn't mean that you can't afford it, like somebody, just qualification wise, depending on what person's scenario is, maybe their debt to income needs to be under a certain ratio to qualify. So not saying that maybe you can't afford an extra $200 or $300 a month because of your taxes going up. Not that we want to, we don't want to have to pay that, but it's always good to have that in your mind that, okay.
Knowledge is power, like your expectation of what to expect later on.
Mm-hmm.
If they're prepared for it and know that it's coming, it just makes even after the transaction. We're not transactional. So like I'm expecting a call from my clients later on. We're gonna be saying happy birthday. We're more like a family type of thing. It's not like, okay, we closed the transaction and I don't know you anymore. I'm expecting to be able to help you along the way and answer all of your questions, and we get the tax bill of knowing what to do and to file that homestead, and me reminding you, and your kids graduating from high school, you're going to hear from me. It's not like a transactional thing for me. So I'm waiting for that phone call of, hey, I got my tax bill and hopefully I was right, so we're in the general vicinity, but they're ready and they're prepared to know what the future holds for them. So, education and knowledge is power.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
One thing I wanted to ask you, kind of like starting with the basics, what would your suggestion be for a buyer to get started? Not, we'll go into like getting pre-qualified and all, but like the actual house buying process of where to start and how to prepare that, instead of being like all over the place and, hey, I like a house over here and I like a house over here. How do you?
Yes. So whenever I talk to somebody, of course, one of my first things are like, how do you plan to pay for this home? Do you have an idea of what your budget's going to be? Have you talked to a lender? Are you paying cash? What's going on? And so then we go from there. So a lot of people have an idea in mind of where they think that they can qualify for, what they can afford, or how much they want to spend. So I don't know how they come to these figures, to be honest with you, or if they just have a number and they pick it and go from there. But I always say,
I think they go on and say, okay, this is the price range that everything is listed in. That is what I need. And this is what I'm like attracted to. For example, like, okay, I need a 4-bedroom house and, I'm looking for there. So they're looking at $500,000 houses. They don't know if they can qualify for that. They don't know what their mortgage payment is. And they go into Zillow, that little calculator that they have on there.
Forget it.
Wrong. I don't know what they're using. Wrong.
Yeah, it's like, I think 95% of the time it's wrong, if not more. But yeah, I mean, I always ask, I say, what are you looking for? One, like, what's on your list? What's your must have? And, where are you looking? Is there a specific area that you want to be in? Like, especially when it comes to like people that aren't from, the area that I cover, in, let's just say Pasco County, for instance. Pasco County is huge. Okay. Like, we have a very huge county. And, when people say, oh, I'm looking for such and such, I'm like, okay, well, where? Do you have a range? Do you have a couple different cities? Like, what are you wanting to be by? What's important to you? Do you go to the beach a lot? Do you have to commute to Tampa a lot? Do you have to go to the airport? Do you work from home? Do you need a yard? Like, there's so many things that go in.
Hudson comparative to like Dade City, like night and day. Zephyr Hills, Lutz. I mean, it's
complete opposites.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as everything, price, the type of house you're going to get, the yard, the area, what you're going to be close to. So, that's really important because, I find a lot of times buyers are literally all over the place. They're like, oh, hey, I'm looking in, this area. The next thing you know, they start inching further and further and further and further. And I'm like,
hey. This is where we started.
Like when we first started talking, we were looking in Hudson, but now we're an hour away in Zephyr Hills in Dade City. And I'm like, which is fine, but I just like want to make sure, like, is this really what you want? I had a client call me yesterday actually, and we're under contract somewhere in Spring Hill for a new construction. And we've been under contract, I think, for like 2 months now. And the build is supposed to be done in November. And we lost out on a couple houses, and they had a pretty broad range of what they were looking for, to be honest. Anywhere from Trinity to like Spring Hill, like South Spring Hill. So, which is depending on where you need to work, and like the southern part of Spring Hill is like basically right outside of Hudson. So, but they kind of went a little bit further, and they're like, we're okay with this. And I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? They were sure. Now they're not sure. So,
what happens?
Well, when it comes to a builder, when you put a deposit down like that, it's different than a regular contract just between a normal, I guess, a private seller, just like a homeowner like me and you. If we wanted to sell our house, it's a quicker process. You're probably looking at anywhere from like a 30 to 60 days, sometimes even up to 90 days, but that's not really the typical closing time frame, unless that situation calls for a longer. But there are deadlines, like an inspection period is right as soon as you get an executed contract, which means both parties, buyers and sellers, are both fully signed everything and agreed upon a price, closing date, just all the terms. So your inspection period is your right to inspect anything and everything that you want. And that's going to be on the buyer's dollar. The buyer can have an AC person come out and inspect the AC unit, a home inspector inspect the entire property. They can have a roofer come out. They can have a plumber come out. They can literally anything, any type of pest inspection.
Time period for that inspection period.
So you can go up to 15 days. Okay. Typically, what I'm seeing now is anywhere between 5 and 10 days.
Is that inclusive of the appraisal, or is that something completely different?
Something completely different. So the inspection period, that is your...
I knew that, but they...
Yeah, right. That's your right to cancel and your right to inspect anything, So during that time, your earnest money or your EMD, your escrow deposit, your good faith deposit, all the things that mean the same thing. You put that, we like to call it, or some people like to call it skin in the game when you go under contract. So you're saying, hey, yes, I really am interested in this house. A typical amount for that is, what I've been seeing, and, what I suggest is 1% of the purchase price. So let's say we're a $200,000 house, $2,000 goes to the title company. That money is still safe and secure during that inspection period. There's other ways you can get it back too if something happens in the contract, but just for this specific period, you can cancel during that time and you can get your deposit back. And that's for any reason, whether you just change your mind, which not saying that you should do that. You should be sure before you put an offer in on a house that that's what you want, because it's not fair to anyone involved, especially the seller, because they take their house off the market, and maybe another buyer who wanted it could miss it and they chose another house, or just, whatever. It could cause problems for the seller. So, but during that time, you can cancel for anything that has to do with the inspection. Maybe you found something in the house that you're like, whoa, this is just way too much for me. I was not ready for this. I wasn't prepared for XYZ that you found in the report, even though the seller may or may not agree to fix it, that it just might be too much for somebody to realize there's extra issues with the house that they didn't know, which is why we do inspections. But yes, they can get their deposit back during that time. However, when it comes to a builder, you're building a house from scratch. There isn't a house to be inspected. So, once you go under contract, and every builder is a little bit different, there is a little grace period. With this one specifically, they had I think they had like a 14-day grace period to, let's get all your stuff in. We need to make sure you have your loan application. We need to have, a conditional approval within this time frame. After, I want to say it was 14 days, which we're well past that at this point. That's when their deposit became non-refundable. So, and we're talking about this was $4,000. So, when it comes to builders, they all have different deposit amounts. I've seen $2,500. I've seen 5,000. This one was 4,000. I've seen 5% or even 10% for a builder. When 10%, hey Drake,
Drake, you spent a lot of time in here, and we would love to hear from you. So could we
I know.
bring you on?
Let's get on the schedule.
Thank you for watching.
Yes. We're not attacking you. So in this scenario, he called and he was like, I just don't know, the area. I just don't know that we're really fond on this area. And I go, okay, just so you know, we might not be able to get your money back. So
that's part of like the basics, like researching the market that you're looking in, and we can help you with that. I mean, you've been here your entire life, but I've been here for quite a long time, and we can definitely help you figure out what that place is for you and your family.
Right.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So moral of the story is you just got to make sure, and if there's something, because he was like, I just feel like in my gut, we're not going to be happy here. And, we just want to be closer. Like they're in Spring Hill. They wanted to be closer, like in Hudson or in Pasco County, closer to work. They both work at hospitals and everything. So I totally get that, and he's like, I don't want to think that just because and they're first time home buyers too. So they're like, I know it's not a forever home, but I don't want to go into a house feeling like that, and
right.
I understand, like we have time to cancel. So let's just make sure that you guys are doubly 100% sure. Of course I'll do my best to, and I'll ask to get, something back from that deposit because, $4,000 is a lot of money, especially if you're a first time home buyer or just anybody in general. So I'm like, we'll see.
Change. Like sometimes things change and they change quick. Unexpected things. So we're definitely your advocate. You kind of have to have your little dream team of people to work together and to understand. And most of it's communication and going to bat. But sometimes there's nothing that can be done. But we definitely will make an effort to make sure that it's right and to help in any way that we can.
Yep. And I felt bad because he was like, I feel bad. I don't want you. I'm like, listen, I'm not going to be mad at you. I'm like, I am going to be upset if we can't get your money back, but I'm like, I understand. I'm like, whatever your decision is, I'm like, I have your back. I support it. I want you to be happy. I want you to be excited about home ownership and be excited about moving into a house and not like, okay, let's count down the clock until I can sell this thing and move. Because that's not what it's about. It shouldn't be like that. So I'm awaiting his call to see what his final decision is. And then we'll just go from there. And, that's kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about how, problems arise in.
Yes, Drake, we can talk about that.
Yeah. I like to talk about landscaping. So anything to do with the house, really, I like to talk about it. We can talk about it forever.
We'll set it up for sure.
Yep. So, but yeah, it just, this was something that we couldn't have prepared for this more because we were all under the impression and they were really excited about the house. But now as time went on,
well, when we started this conversation, you were talking about inspections, and in my part of the transaction, the only inspection that I need is the appraisal. But that alone is not everything that should happen. An appraiser is not an inspector. They're not going through that home with a fine tooth comb and having that experience. So home inspection is a must. And people ask me all the time, oh, should I do a home inspection? It looked fine. In my opinion is that get the home inspection. Yes, you're trying to find out if there's anything wrong that you can't see with the naked eye. And does it suck? Like if you go and you find something and now you no longer want to buy that house and then you're back to the drawing board and having to do that same inspection on the next house? Sure. think about all the money you just saved yourself from purchasing that property before you knew that there was even a problem.
Right. And you need a 4-point and a wind mitigation for your insurance anyway. So, you don't have to do the full in-depth, like, run through the house with a fine-tooth comb. So, and some people don't, because they're like, you know what, I love this house, I'm okay, like, if there's some issues or whatever. And some people just do the home inspection too, just to make sure there's no major things. And then they have a list of items that they're like, okay, I'm going to work on this over time.
There's always little small things, no matter what. It could be a brand new house. That's why they go through with all the little blue tape and fix all the problems. They're not really problems. They're stuff that needs to be fixed.
Right. So, it's a good piece of information, and especially if you are a first-time home buyer or just somebody who isn't very, I guess, handy. It's a good learning tool. So that way, what's going on in the house that you're purchasing. So it's like, if there's a problem area that you need to watch or just maintain, or something that needs to be serviced, that way you kind of, you have that, again, knowledge is power. So
don't misinterpret some of those inspections. That's their job, is to tell you every little thing that they see within this house. Does it mean that there's a major problem because, I don't know, there's a GFI outlet problem or what have you? No, there's not an electrical problem, but sometimes their wording within those inspections, they're so technical that it almost gives the impression that there's something more wrong than the small thing that they've seen that they're, that they have to talk about.
Right.
There's some things that happen that are big: air conditioning units or water heaters or, I don't know, roof. The foundation, something like that. But it also gives you a little bit of negotiating power, like on your side. I don't have anything to do with that. But say that something is a little off, or the air conditioning just needs to be cleaned. So you, as the agent, could go and negotiate with the seller's agent to have them clean it before they leave, and put that into the contract, things like that. I think we've run across that quite a bit, of some little improvements that need to be done.
Yeah. Or if there's like a bunch of little things like that don't affect the value of the home, they don't affect like insurance, we can get a credit. And if the seller's like, I don't want to deal with having, handyman in here, I don't want to deal with the repairs, let me just give you a credit at closing. So that way you can take care of it when you, move in. Or let's just say there's like some cosmetic things, like there's like flooring that's chipped or carpet that's just in really bad shape. Like they're like, we don't want to deal with replacing the flooring, we're not doing it. And sometimes, and then for me personally, I would rather have that so I can get the flooring that I want, and make sure it doesn't get messed up by anyone else before I move into my new house. I'd rather have, and I'm kind of weird. I enjoy stuff like that anyway. Like, I like projects. So, I'd rather have the money to go and pick out the flooring, make sure it's the right one, take my time, get it installed, and you might even save money that way, because, we would probably do something like that ourselves. And you don't have to pay anybody to do the labor. And then you can use some of that towards either another update in your house or just saving money on your closing costs. So there's just so many things and so many different scenarios. We could sit here for hours and hours and hours and tell you what could happen or what has happened and how we diverted and how we fixed something and how we overcame another thing, because really that's a huge part of our everyday job, is problem solving, finding solutions, overcoming certain scenarios, and creatively figuring out how we can make something work in a messed up situation. And we come across a lot of messed up situations, not that it's anybody's like fault in general, but like it happens.
Part of the day-to-day for the most part, and trying to get ahead of it, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the time, and I know that we only had like 30 minutes, but as we're talking, like, it stems different conversations, and you say one thing and, that reflects on something that I've had an experience with that go hand in hand. So honestly, the conversation could continue quite a bit. I made some notes, so we'll talk a little bit more, as the days or the weeks go on. And Drake is in here saying drainage issues on inspections are tough, that they're hard to see. Stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like different parties have different things that they're looking for and different experience. So definitely trying to get those inspections up front to avoid any problems is very important. And that pretty short period of time to be able to do it in to make a decision of whether you're proceeding. So.
And it's worth it spending the extra money on some of these inspections because it could save you thousands down the road, or it could give you that peace of mind that there isn't a problem. Because when it comes back, going back to what you're saying, sometimes the inspectors award things in a certain way. We have to keep in mind too, this is the world that we live in. Everybody's trying to cover their own butt. The inspectors have to say things a certain way, or they have to mention things a certain way. They can't, like, let's just take mold, for instance. They're not allowed to say mold. They're not, unless they have an actual mold certification that they can inspect it.
There is black stuff on the wall.
There's certain things they can't say. And they always suggest getting a licensed professional in that field, or licensed technician. And some people get a little bit mad, like, well, why do we have to call somebody else and pay for that? Because you're having one person come out and inspect your entire home. Like, they're not a roofer, they're not a plumber, they're not an electrician, they're not I don't know, they're not
their job is to inspect and to point out the things that they are seeing for you to be able to go in there with your professional expert to determine whether it's a true problem or not.
Right. Exactly. Because when we go look at houses, I'll tell you what, we are not crawling in attics. We are not, testing. We're not testing the air. We're not, we sometimes we turn on the water and things like that, but like, we're not going in there testing the plugs. Like, that's not what we're doing. It's just, we don't have time for that. We don't have time for that. And, but again, going back to, because we're getting sidetracked and stuff again, like, these inspectors are covering their butt. In a real estate transaction, there are so many different addendums that protect every single party involved, the title company, the appraiser. Like, there's so many disclosures, and it's just, unfortunately, that's the world that we live in. And that's any type of legal transaction. If you're buying a car, like, they're filling out a credit card application, there's always going to be those disclosures that you have to sign. And, that's just how it is. But since we are definitely over our time, I know that we'll come back on and we'll talk about these subjects and even more again another day. But next week we have Tanner Kilty with RJ Kilty Heating, Plumbing, and Cooling. So that's going to be exciting. This year they celebrated 50 years in business, so that's really cool. I know that they're the presenting sponsor for Halloween. Right?
They are. Yeah, absolutely. For the second year in a row. Very much appreciated. Yeah. It's going to be fantastic.
So yeah, that'll be fun.
In the podcast room, if I'm not mistaken, next week, if we could work it. That's the plan as of right now, I think.
I'll reach out to him as soon as we get off this. And then we will get with Drake and get him on schedule. Yeah. Because I know that we have the next, I think, like 4 or 5 weeks, I think we are booked, and but we'll get him on sometime in September.
All right,
maybe towards the end, and we'll talk about the drainage issues and all the landscaping fun stuff, and it'll be a great show.
All right, sounds good. All right, happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. I know I'll be talking to you later. Yeah. So, bye guys. Have a good day.